Maru is in the midst of battle with this unnamed curse user, a fighter capable of taking down both Tsurugi and Yuuka. However, Maru isn't so easily beaten. Though he is seemingly unconscious, he uses his strange and foreign curse technique alongside his hand-to-hand prowess to push this curse user to his absolute limits, to the point where this curse user thinks back to the one time in his life in which he had felt so in danger, so certain that he was about to die. The only time he had felt such a sure sense of his own imminent mortality was when he encountered Yuji Itadori. With this latest chapter of Jujutsu Kaisen Modulo, we get our first glimpse of one of our favourite characters from the main series outside of, Maki and Yuta. Yuji appears to us in a brief flashback of the curse user's most dire moment. We see Yuji donning a hoodie surrounded by shadows. Now, before some people say this person isn't Yuji, first of all, you're stupid. When these chapters first leaked, some people argued that this wasn't even Yuji for some reason. Oh really? Who else could it be then? Panda? A simple side-by-side kind of proves it. Like, if you don't believe this is Yuji, can you tell me another character in JJK who has a scar in this exact same position? Another weird argument people have been making is that this panel somehow means that Yuji became evil after the main series, just because he looks pretty menacing and mysterious in this panel. If you also believe this, you're also goofy as hell. Think about the context behind Yuji's face here, right? The possible context at least. Yuji has come across a curse user, and within the last few chapters we've been made very aware that this curse user has quite the kill count, so chances are he's done it before, which makes sense given that his curse technique is pretty gross and creepy, and as Kenjaku said, curse techniques define a user's world, and this dude's curse technique is pretty creepy, so it makes sense that he himself is a pretty creepy and evil dude. So given the fact that this person has killed previously and is really creepy, chances are that Yuji came across him or his victims in the past and nearly killed him for it. I have no idea how this curse user escaped Yuji, I'm going to be completely honest. It reminds me of when Kakazu said he fought the First Hokage and somehow survived and somehow escaped. It's the same scenario here. You're fighting one of the strongest in the verse, getting washed by them and still somehow managing to escape by a random act of God off screen. So yeah, I don't think that Yuji turned evil after the Shinjuku showdown. He probably looks pissed off because he came across an evil murderer. I mean, he looks very similar here to how he did inside of his own domain when he was threatening Sukuna. So it makes sense Yuji just came across this guy and saw how evil he is. That's why he looks so serious here. This would also explain why the curse user felt so in danger that he was reminded of Yuji whilst in this one-sided fight against Maru. There are also a couple of other things we can speculate on about Yuji after the main series from this panel alone. We can maybe argue that this panel itself probably takes place a little bit after the main series, as he is seemingly on his own, and the curse user makes no reference to Megumi or Nobara, so this interaction more than likely took place after the trio stopped going on missions together. Or if you want to go full agenda mode, you can say Yuji was on a mission with the other two members of the trio, but he is so far above Megumi and Nobara that Yuji was so significantly stronger than both Megumi and Nobara that they weren't even a passing thought to this curse user, whilst at the same time, despite this curse user's declining mental state and loss of memory, Yuji remains a very vivid recollection in his mind, which is more aura points for Yuji, I guess. It could also mean that Yuji became strong enough to be sent on missions on his own. Granted, that's kind of a given since most grade 1s are sent on missions on their own all the time. Yuji could have been going on solo missions for like anything past or around Shibuya, to be honest. So him being on his own here doesn't mean too much. It's just something else to make note of. Even on the simpler side of things, this panel alone just means that Yuji kept being a sorcerer for a decent amount of time after Shinjuku, which is pretty dope. Also, given the fact that Yuji has been brought up at all in this, spin-off, this is a good sign of things to come. Chances are, even if Yuji is currently dead during the events of Modulo, which is a very significant possibility, we will still probably get more details about how his life was after the events of the main series, though chances are he is probably dead in my opinion. But I would not be saddened if he was alive. I say he's probably dead due to the fact that when Usami saw Dabura for the first time, more than likely the strongest of the aliens that we know of, he didn't think about any strong sorcerers that are capable of beating him. He didn't think about Yuji or anyone that could be anywhere near that level during the events of Modulo. And since Usami doesn't think about any sorcerers that are around that level of skill, chances are Yuji's either dead or hidden underground somewhere from Sorcerer Society for some reason. I can almost guarantee that we get more of Yuji or just more about the main cast from JJK in Modulo, because why else would this scene happen? And since Gege storyboards Modulo, we we can look to the main series for similar patterns in which Gege brings up characters in passing just for them to be expanded upon later. For example, Toji is described to us in the end of the Origins of Obedience arc when Megumi uses his domain for the first time, before we see him in the Hidden Inventory arc, in which we see this full flashback expanded upon, as well as Toji being the main obstacle of the Hidden Inventory arc. We get small glimpses of both Hikari and Yuta way before the two of them actually appear in the main series, described to us by Gojo around the time of Yuji's initial demise at the detention facility. We don't probably see Hikari till the whole Fight Club stuff, which is more than 100 chapters later. Another case study is Miguel, who shows up not at all during the main series, exclusively in JJK Zero, except for around 1 or 2 panels, once around the time of the Goodwill event, and another time during Tengen's discussion of the Culling Games in the Perfect Prep, and then he doesn't show up till around chapter 254. So Gege is more than capable of bringing up characters and stuff that's gonna happen, or in case happened with them. So it feels like it is more than likely we are going to get to see a good chunk more of Yuji in future chapters of Modulo. Whether or not we see more of the rest of the cast that are more than likely still alive is still up in the air. However, I feel like it goes without saying, but one of the characters that is most likely to still be kicking during the events of Modulo is Wee or Ui, whatever you want to call him, since he was both very young during the course of the main series, and on top of that, he more than likely became the new head of the new Shadow style. So who knows, he might have made himself immortal with the binding vow of the old heads. But out of a lot of the characters from the main series, he is one of them that is more than likely to still be up and kicking during Modulo. Obviously, other characters like Miwa, Momo, Todo, Megumi, etc., and any of the students really that survived the Shinjuku showdown, chances are they could still be alive too. At this point, the only people in the world who knows if any of these characters are alive are Gege and Yuji, and ironically enough, Yuji is the one we are more than likely going to get the most details about in the upcoming chapters. The context of the chapter overall does help to paint a pretty funny picture of Yuji. I mean, we see Maru defying logic, making objects float, heat up, freeze, water, just doing all this inexplicable and vague stuff, whilst at the same time, this is on a similar level of fear-inducing as Yuji, who was more than likely techniquelessly beating this grade 1 level curse user into the ground, because he wouldn't have had to use blood manipulation, or shrine, or his domain, or anything else to beat this random-ass old man. Which is even funnier when you think about the fact that this cursed user would more than likely be significantly stronger back when Yuji saw him. So this more than likely above grade 1 level at the time curse user for Yuji, but Yuji just instilled him with so much fear he still feels it in his dementia-ridden mind, which is really cool. I'm not even a really big fan of Yuji. I've spoken about my unpopular opinions on Yuji before in previous videos, but even I am very hyped and intrigued by this reveal. Like, in these 6 chapters, all we've seen of the previous cast is Grandpa Yuta and Grandma Maki, and it's so annoying that all these panels are like from a distance, so we can't really make out their features either, which is very much a shame to me. But in conclusion, there isn't much else to say about Yuji's appearance in this chapter alone. It feels as if it's a really cool precursor for more to come. Though on the surface, it just seems to be a small reference to one of Jujutsu Kaisen's most popular characters. In my opinion, it's just really cool to see one of the main cast again, even if it's something as simple as 2 obscured panels. Just these 2 panels on their own have got me crying like Marco at Marineford. I've been going through One Piece again, and it's very dope, can you tell? But the next chapter of Modulo is going to be hype, with Cross stepping up to stop Maru. It may even give us a gleam into how their curse techniques actually work, because right now it's still very vague and it isn't properly explained yet. All we know is based on minimal evidence as well as conjecture from this 80-plus-year-old curse user who is literally losing his mind. So chances are we might get a bit more of a glimpse into how it works, as well as how it's linked to Cross and the potential invasion with the Bura. Who knows? All I know is that I'm really hyped to see what happens next in Modulo. But with that being said, doodles my doodles, hopefully I'll see you in the next one. Peace.